Hey, so in this video I'm just going to be going through some codes and conventions of short films, ones that I've collected from watching multiple ones. As you can see on this video, I'll have two short films just running in the background just so you can obviously watch something while I'm speaking. The first one is about a man now looking back at his childhood and talking about what he was interested in, what the hard times he went through and how he sort of pulled through that. And I think the second one is about a skydiver who suffered an injury after a plane crash and how he recovered from that as well. So they're sort of similar themed, and they're both documentaries, which is something I'll talk about later on. But first of all, I'm just going to look at all of the codes and conventions considering short films. So I'm just going to rattle through obviously the technical elements. So camera work, most short films are shot in close-up or medium that I've found. Whereas there'll be a wider variety in a feature-length film. This is simply because they've got more time to prepare for their films. Like short films, most of the time obviously will have a closer deadline, or they won't have as much time to work on it. It just doesn't give them the opportunity obviously to shoot all these incredible wide shots, but there are some exceptions obviously that have taken longer to film. I've also noticed that over-shoulder shots are used quite frequently. In turn with shot reverse shot for conversations, and I mean that's a simple technique you pick up, but it's obviously one that's very effective. You'd see that in feature length as well, but it's just something I noticed with the camera work in short films especially. Obviously I've been looking at documentaries personally, but interviews and documentaries are best shot front on, so obviously where the person is sat directly in front of the camera and there's no sort of side on views and things, but that's the most that's the way to convey the most emotion, obviously, because you've got the face head on, you can see their whole face. I have seen some where they shoot it side on. I just think you lose that sort of connection with the person on the screen. So obviously if we go on to film a documentary, I'd want to probably pick up a front on view and maybe just some other shots where we're just talking about stuff that's related to it, the people that are talking about stuff that's related, and then we'd show that through a shot. As for editing, they use a variety of techniques, but they don't often overdo it. Now there were a few of the college ones, obviously ones we'd done at college before in previous years, where they'd overdone the editing and you could tell with the motion blur and thing it was too much. So it's obviously best to keep it simple and cut well, but that doesn't mean obviously you can't use complicated techniques. It's just finding the right balance between that. So I found that quick cuts using a short crossfade is effective, obviously, so it blends a bit and it doesn't cut dramatically. I mean, that's something I do on Sony Vegas, and I'm not sure obviously how it translates into Premiere Pro, but I know that's something I can do on Vegas. A lot of it is good. They edit the quality obviously of the videos. They don't go with the standard colors, contrast, saturation. They don't stick to those settings. They will go in and they will edit those settings to give the best looking film. So obviously when you have all these lovely cinematic shots, they do make sure they get the contrast there and the saturation is correct, and that's something obviously we didn't do the first time around with our film openings. I feel like we probably could have focused on that a bit more, but yeah. Also there's a lack of long takes obviously, but this is down to the fact that like I said earlier with the there's not a wide variety of shots. They have less time to prepare, and obviously a long take will take a long time to prepare because you have to have everything perfect as you're obviously not cutting in between shots. As for sound, now this is crucial honestly, because you have to make sure the dialogue is clear and interesting, and that goes along with the narrative obviously that you're telling. But it's just little things I think you'll see on this film there's the cars crashing and things like that, and they have the sounds in the background, and it just makes it a lot more effective when you're looking at these shots. So that's obviously crucial. Not every short film has dialogue though. Often they'll have the action, and they'll have the shot obviously on the screen, and they'll just have a simple voiceover in the background telling the story. But it's not proper dialogue face to face, if you know what I mean. There'll just be a short voiceover, or in some obviously there won't be any dialogue at all. It'll just be a silent film. You can have a voiceover of a person reading, like I just said, and this is probably most effective if you were cutting between shots, if you're doing maybe like a dramatic sort of film where you're looking at scenery and things like that. That's probably the best. Or if you're telling an emotional story, a voiceover works the best. Using music in the background of shots is also something you could do. Obviously you can overlap the tracks, you can have music while the dialogue's playing as well, and that's important, is to make sure you get a good like a composition, obviously a good composition of music, because we obviously have to create our own music when we for our short films, so it's making sure that that's good as well. As for mise-en-scène elements, right, so I've looked at how this is so crucial to creating a believable story. If you don't have the right props and costumes, you're not going to tell a believable story. If you're not in the right setting for the story, it's not going to seem believable. It's going to seem like you've just made it up, and it's lack of preparation in trying to tell this story. Obviously that's just something you saw there with Matthew Brown, A Colourful Life. He's sat in what looks like it could be his house when he was younger, and it's just little things like that that just really set the story and obviously makes you buy into it a bit more, makes it more emotional to, you know, watch. Obviously looking more at costumes, they must match the setting, i.e. a suit in an office environment, or as you've seen on the screen there, if you're jumping out of a plane, you're gonna have to have some sort of, you know, I don't know what it is, like skydiving gear, parachute. It's all got to be done properly. If you just saw him jumping down in a pair of shorts and a t-shirt, you'd obviously know it's fake. So in a documentary as well, the props are so important. There's little things like they'll have like picture books and things showing, obviously as they did in the first film, from their past, and you'll see it in this as well. In Above All Else, they show pictures from his past, and it's little touches like that, the way they blend it in with other shots as well, that it conveys the story so well, and that's something obviously we'll try and do if we make our own documentary. It's often though the mise-en-scène can often be like quite cliche. Obviously you want to portray the genre really clearly to your audience, there's no confusion there. If you really think about zombie films, obviously they're going to look like generic zombies. They're not going to try some completely different thing where it doesn't look like a zombie. They want it to immediately scream at you, this is a zombie film, this is what I'm watching. It's making that especially clear that's important. So now I'm going to go into the documentary conventions. What I found is it's the whole documentary, and you'll be surprised at how much they can tell in 5 or 6 minutes. It has a journey, so it starts somewhere and it progresses and it tells you this story slowly, surely, drip feeding you the information, and it's really effective if done properly. Use of video effects is vital, so like obviously cutting between shots, having transitions, obviously fading shots like this, as you can see now, like the motion blur and things to show that he's concussed and things like that are so crucial to telling a compelling story. The audio voiceovers you can have, often cutting back to the person obviously standing there speaking, is important as well. But I've looked into sort of like why they do this, and it's honestly quite simple. It's just they want you to be having something to look at all the time. They don't want to just record themselves sitting there telling you this story, because no one's going to watch that. They want to tell a story where it's, you know, put into a proper video. Otherwise they'd just write a book, wouldn't they, if they just wanted you to focus on the story. It's about having compelling visuals that match this compelling story. Something else I looked at is that the sounds can bring the visuals to life. Like I said earlier with the car crash and things like that, those little sounds that you can pick up are really crucial to telling the story. They can often refer to the past with pictures or video, like you've seen in this one here. You will see it in a bit. They'll have like a newspaper, obviously, and that's a key like prop in telling you the rest of the story, because you know what happens to him. Story-wise, like narrative-wise, it can either be really simple or genuinely quite an emotional story. Like both of these, I say the second one especially is an emotional story, but elements of the first story are quite simple. Like, it's just a guy speaking about how when he was a kid, obviously he was interested in making all these like little car crashes and things like that because of the town he grew up in. They had an earthquake and things like that. But it's like, it's simple things that have done well can really make a good story. So he then from that finds his love of photography, and that's what's, you know, brought him to where he is today. It's things like that that make a really good story. Like, I was watching another short film as well as a documentary, and it was just literally a guy just talking about his day and how he would obviously get on the train each day, and then how it all changes. Like, there could be someone hit by a train, and that completely could throw you off, and you thinking, I've been like going onto this train every day, and then that one time obviously they get hit by a car, it completely changes hit by the train, sorry, it completely changes his perspective on things. So it's simple stories that just have a twist to them that can really, you know, bring it into an amazing short film. And this is like sort of leading on to the creative aspects you need to make a truly interesting documentary. There's things in a documentary that are creative, and they really help to push forward how it's an interesting story. For example, as well, I was watching another documentary today. It was called 1 Year Lease, and it was about a landowner who'd obviously leave voicemails to her, obviously the tenants, and they would obviously listen to these. But instead of like deleting them, he must have kept them on either a mobile phone or obviously a normal telephone, and they told the whole story through the voicemail. So that was the only audio in the short film, was just the voicemail. What I probably will write a bit more on that on this blog. I've also noted that along with other video effects as well, time lapses can be very effective. The whole concept of time obviously is played out a lot in documentaries and in short films, but time lapses especially, I think there's something to it. It's just such a creative way of showing a picture and showing a video that you can condense all of this time down into a few seconds. It is something that's really impressive, and something that I'd really want to do and practice for our documentary, because I think it could really impress people in the audience. The whole concept of time as well, it leads back to that journey and that narrative that you want to be talking about time and how people change over time and how things can change over time. And there's obviously a lot of time hops in documentaries. There'll be an ellipsis where they'll obviously have a shorter amount of time to tell a story. They're going to have to jump time at some point, and that is something obviously that is a key aspect of a short film documentary. So I think that's it, honestly, for conventions that I've found. If I find any more, obviously I'm going to do another video on it, and I will explain that a bit further, but that's just something I've found now. Obviously, leaning onto it, I've found that me and Greg at least want to do a documentary. We want to try and film a documentary, so that's probably what I will focus on from now on. But you know, I will make more videos on it, and I will explain it further. So thank you for watching.